Welcome to Tripod, as the name suggests, a travel retail themed podcast series in collaboration with the SEVA Group. I'm Martin Moodie, and I'm delighted to welcome Roger Jackson, who, besides being today's guest, is going to join me as a co-host in future editions. Roger is Managing Director of Dubai-based the SEVA Group, IMEA, and Organico Solutions, the Dubai operation of the SEVA Group. He has a wealth of travel retail experience, much of it generated at global drinks giant Diageo, where he spent over 13 years. So Roger, a very warm welcome.
Thanks, Martin. Great to be here. Really looking forward to it.
Great to have you here. Now, before we get started, Roger, and find out a bit more about you, Roger Jackson, the man, not just the businessman, I'm going to let our listeners into a little secret. For it was you that approached me about becoming involved with this podcast, not simply as a sponsor, but also actually co-hosting it. Tell me what triggered that interest.
I did actually, Martin. It's true. So I think a couple of years ago, I approached you, TFWA CAM 2019, actually. And I think, I was really lucky in my previous role to have, an influx every year from our graduate program of new, fresh talent coming into travel retail. And I think there's a couple of things. I think the first thing is we forget that travel retail, is so difficult to understand. And the reason it's more difficult to understand than a domestic business is most domestic businesses, you can go down to the high street and you can go and see where your product's sold. You can go and interact with consumers. You can go and pick up bottles on shelf or products. And it's quite easy to understand because you actually shop there or you consume there. So whether you manage in the on-trade or the off-trade, you can actually go and see your products being sold. And most probably you as an individual, do that on a weekly basis anyway. I think with travel retail, the challenge is if you've got a young account manager, say, working on D3, 3,500 outlets, the chances are they're never going to see more than probably about 1% of those outlets. And then to understand everything else in travel retail, whether that's border stores in Southeast Asia, whether that's airports in Africa, whether that's the Middle East or, the way the Russian business works or the European or the border stores in South America, in Brazil, the arrivals business in Brazil, the whole thing is so unique and very different to what most people have experienced. What I found personally when I came into travel retail a decade and a half ago is that it took me about 3 years to really understand things because people would walk around and just expect you understand these concepts. Like downtown duty free doesn't exist in Europe, so the chances are you've never experienced that. And actually downtown duty free mainly is a Southeast Asia, model. So it's things like that. And I'm hoping, and the reason I approached you, Martin, obviously you've got a wealth of knowledge in travel retail, and you've also got a platform. And I just thought, the two of us could come together and hopefully demystify quite a lot of what's going on in travel retail, talk about what's going on, but also most importantly, we're both lucky to have, a lot of customers and a lot of friends in travel retail with great personalities. And I think because most of those in traditional media don't come across, very difficult, in traditional media to get those personalities across. I just think this platform could do that.
Yeah, well, as you say, we're going to be learning about some of the great characters in this series, the men and women of our industry, and sometimes outside our industry. I think what drives them, who inspires them, what they do outside of work, what they listen to, what they read, where they love to travel, when they can travel, what the world will look like in the future. So we're going to put some of that context around you, Roger. Tell us, if you will, just to set the ball rolling about your life journey. I did some research on LinkedIn. I got as far back as the Bradford University School of Management, and even before that, a place called Holy Cross College. Is that right? Tell me about that and where you grew up, moved on, and ultimately laid the groundwork for who you are today and where you are today.
Yeah, I think, quite a traditional education. Joined Coca-Cola, did my degree with Coca-Cola. So essentially I worked and studied at the same time. After being at Coke 7 or 8 years, I joined Diageo, domestic business, off trade and on trade, and then a role came up in travel retail. Now, travel retail for me was just, I'd never even heard of it. Of course, I'd flown on holiday and you shop in duty free, but I had no idea there would be a separate part of the organisation that would run and manage that business. So I only really went over there because Paul Downing, who's one of the previous commercial directors for Europe in travel retail, he went over there, and I used to work for him in my previous role. He said, "Look, do you fancy coming across?" So I've ended up in travel retail completely by accident, and probably not fully, through my own, ambition. I've just ended up here, and then what I found here, like most people do, is a very infectious industry, highly family owned, relationship driven, very, very fast moving, insightful business full of really good people, actually. And a decade and a half, I'm still here. For the first 18 months, I was like, no, I'm going to move out of here very quickly. I'll go back into a domestic role. But there is a bit of an addiction with travel retail. I think we see that in most organisations where you see people really wanting to stay in the industry. And that's why I'm still here. I enjoy it every day. And that's the most important thing for me.
Yeah, I remember stumbling into it around 34 years ago in 1987 when I came over from New Zealand to England. And I thought it was going to be a few months as well. In fact, I took a 6-month contract with a publishing company to write their Cannes issue. And I'm still here all these decades later, just as I'm about to be pensioned off. So it is indeed an addictive industry. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, though, Roger. You're married to Natalie and your little daughter. Tell us about family life in Dubai, where you're based.
Yeah, we love it here. Originally came here with Diageo nearly 4 years now. I used to manage the travel retail business for everywhere apart from Asia. And I also managed the GCC domestic business at the same time out of here, as that reports into the travel retail team over at Diageo. What we found with Dubai, even though we've been here many times on holiday, just a great, diverse, safe place to live. So when it came to setting up my own business, which you mentioned at the start, we moved back here. We love family life here. My daughter loves it here. My wife loves it here, and it just works for us. So yeah, we're really happy here, Martin.
All right. Well, we'll touch on some of those personal subjects towards the end of the program, but in every edition of Tripod, we're going to take a particular issue or story that's featuring in the news around that time. And today we're going to talk about trade shows, and one in particular in Cannes. But firstly, of course, Roger, I've got to mention some travel retail related news from the weekend. That was actually terrific news. And that was the success of Leicester City Football Club, who won the FA Cup for the first time in, I think, 137-year history. And that's brilliant news, of course, for one of the great retailers in our industry, King Power. And there were great scenes at the weekend. I don't know if you saw the game, but lovely to see the King Power ownership going through some really good times, because they've had some pretty tough times in recent years.
Yeah, I watched the game. I thought it was fantastic. Nothing against Chelsea, but for a club, like Leicester, to get that success, albeit they won the Premier League, a few seasons ago now, but for them to get that success was unbelievable. And I think what I've seen in the press about the ownership, literally every article was just talking about they're the type of owners we want in English football. And Martin, is someone, I know you're not from the UK, but you've made it your home. The UK aren't that great at accepting, foreign ownership, whether it's football or any industry. And for that family to come into the club, and they haven't had it easy, as you said. There's obviously been tragedy as well, but they haven't had it easy. They nearly got relegated the season before they won the Premier League. For King Power to be so in the people's affection, and I think you saw Kasper Schmeichel sort of pulling the owner onto the pitch, to lift the trophy. I think that said everything about that family. So yeah, no, absolutely fantastic news and great for travel retail, and it was really nice to see.
Yeah, it was lovely to see Quintok down there on the pitch, and up above on a giant screen was a great image of Kunvichai. Rest in peace. I thought that was a really poignant moment. So I'm delighted for Quintok and Susan Whelan and all the great team at King Power. I mean, because they're carrying on Kunvichai's legacy. Okay, Roger, let's talk trade shows. As I mentioned a moment ago, we're going to talk about TFWA World Exhibition, which has just recently been shifted back a little to 24 to 28 October down on the French Riviera. Roger, do you believe the show should proceed this year?
I do, Martin. I think it's got to. Obviously it didn't happen last year for all the reasons we know, and I think it's got to happen. But I don't think, unfortunately, it's as simple as that. I think, before we start, it's a complicated, emotive, conversation. Everybody's got a different opinion, and it's a really, really challenging conversation. I think for me, there's probably three elements to this that you've got to look at. Whether, what happens and how it goes ahead. I think the first one is we need a strong trade body in the TFWA. For those who aren't close to the TFWA do some fantastic work for us on behalf of our industry. They're our voice in many of these conversations. And for those who aren't close to it, we have challenges with the World Health Organization at the moment regarding sale of alcohol and cigarettes in airports. Huge lobbying required and conversations with governments, and royal families are involved. So there's a lot of work that goes on in this. This isn't as simple as, we run trade shows. There's lobbying on labeling in Africa. There's lobbying on labeling in South America. Essentially TFWA does the job that, no one company or one retailer can do on their own. And this goes on 24/7. It's like happening all the time. So I guess the first thing is we need a really strong trade body, which we do have in the TFWA. And most of their funding comes from trade shows, the four main trade shows we have in the year. So Orlando, Singapore, Cannes, and obviously Medfa. So it's really important that obviously that body carries on running as it does. And let's be honest, it needs funding to do that. So my first point is, yes, I think it should go ahead. And we really, really need the TFWA to do the important role that they do in our industry. I think the second thing is, can people go and will they want to go? I look at France. I looked in the paper this morning. France is averaging about 17,000 cases a day.
Yeah.
Now, with the TFWA moving the dates out, it gives obviously them another 4 weeks, so about 5 months from now, to be able to get, travel happening again at the moment. I think the challenge is, we won't really know how, I don't want to say how safe, but how possible it will be for people to travel by that point. At the moment, as a UK citizen but a resident in Dubai, I currently can't travel into my own country without a 10-day quarantine in a hotel, essentially a isolated hotel room for 10 days, and then I'm allowed out. So I think the problem with this is you're having to guess what you think will happen in 5 months. Now, the risk with COVID, and what I've personally experienced, is any guess I've had on what COVID's going to do, unfortunately, has been pretty, wrong. So I think the challenge is for people to be able to look at a date in October at the moment, whether that's a trade show or a holiday or anything else. I think it's really difficult at this point to be able to say, yes, I'm going to go and do that, and let's get all of this going. The knock-on effect with that, Martin, is most trade show stands at TFWA, from a build cost, from a rent cost, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of euros or dollars. So the challenge is people, I don't think, will be readily able to say, yes, I can go and I'm going to do it. And then you've got the other question is, will people want to? And I guess then that's down to personal choice. Our industry is all about travel, and we have to champion getting traveling back as quickly as possible. But I think there's a big then secondary conversation with, will actually people, fly there? And then I think the third point is, have people got the money? Brand owners, most of them are, 80, 85% down versus 2019. retailers the same, distributors the same. So the question is, are all those, different individuals and companies able to actually afford to go, whether it's the cost of getting there or the actual cost of being an exhibitor? And that's a big question mark as well. I've spoken to a lot of brand owners myself, and most of them are in the place where we just can't do it. Most travel retail parts of companies are about 3 or 4% of turnover. So if you take any of the sort of top 10 alcohol companies, travel retail broadly is 3 to 4% of their total global operating income. Now the challenge is, even optically, to then take your whole team to the south of France in October after basically delivering a horrendous 24 months of performance, when your domestic colleagues have been hitting it out of the park, because as we know, in lockdown, consumption, especially of alcohol, has increased, and in many other categories. So the challenge is, even optically, even if companies want to do it, I think there'll be some reservation there. So for me, Martin, to summarise, yes, we need it. I think from my perspective, and this is my personal view, and this isn't necessarily about TFWA Cannes, this would be the car show, this would be the film show. I think for anything at the moment, it is very difficult for anyone to be able to commit to something in 4 or 5 months' time, given the current climate. So for me, let's go ahead with it. Let's go virtual, so that everybody can say, yes, we can sign up to that now. There's a cost to that. We start planning for that. And great, if we get a bit closer nearer the time, we'll have to have some type of watered down physical show just to get people there. Lower cost, I think that would be the perfect sweet point. I give praise to TFWA for moving it back. I think that's a solid decision, to try and give this a chance of it happening. However, for me, it's very difficult to commit to something like that without the knowledge of what the situation is going to be.
So you've hit the nail on the head. They, as an organisation, face a huge conundrum, and so do would-be exhibitors. And I have a fair bit of insight and sympathy to that situation. We organise physical events, or we did traditionally, such as the Trinity Forum, very successful ones, and we had to call them all off last year. As you know, we went with a virtual expo format, which we are going to repeat this year. So I guess I might be accused of a conflict of interest here, but I don't see it as a conflict. We too hope that the TFWA can hold a successful event this year. Your points about the organisation are totally valid, and them succeeding is good for every stakeholder in the business, including publishing companies like mine. But I think their conundrum is very difficult. You hit on the issue of perception, you hit on the issue of cost. The issue of health is probably the greatest one of all, and corporate liability, I think, comes into it around that. I think the difficulty that TFWA and therefore the industry faces, Roger, is simply a lack of clarity. Now, you've got to have sympathy for them, because how can you give clarity when the situation's changing almost by the day, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, sometimes 4 steps back in terms of health situations all around the world. The recent outbreak in Singapore being a classic example. So that is a conundrum. In my view, they would be best to go virtual. I think that's a more realistic option in a year such as this. But I take your point that they are hanging in there, and maybe some kind of hybrid will be the end result. Do you think that's the most likely outcome of this, Roger?
I think, Martin, look, go hybrid. Get people signed up now, because people can sign up for virtual. Get everyone signed up now. And do you know something? If in 8 weeks' time we're in a far better, clearer situation, which is a possibility. I've just heard Vegas has opened up today with no social distancing, and if you've been vaccinated, no masks. Whether I think that's personally the right thing to do or the wrong thing, being so close to India where I am at the moment, it's very difficult to see the two different worlds, where we're seeing horrific scenes in India. So go virtual, get everyone signed up now. Let's get everyone committed to it. And then if we can get a physical element to the show, fantastic. The thing you've got to throw in here, Martin, I'm not on the TFWA. Of course, we're members, but I'm not privy to any of those conversations. I'm sure there's some stuff in the background that, you and I don't know, Martin. Whether it's insurance, I don't know, whatever it could be. There could be all sorts of different things. So, and it's not right to speculate because I just don't know. So I'm sure there's other things going on there, but let's get the virtual element announced, get everyone signed up, so there is some clarity. And then look, we'll just have to all move pretty quickly, which is what we're used to doing in this industry. If we can do a physical element, and that physical element will have to be different versus 2019 or 2018. We're not going to have probably trade show stands that, cost €500,000. But if we can get everybody signed up virtually and then do get a physical element later on, fantastic. But let's get commitment now that we all know it's happening. It's going to be virtual, and everyone can commit to that. And then look, we'll have the physical element on. My view is going straight after the physical element, whilst I really respect the intent. I think at the moment it's not, it's too difficult and, too complicated to see if that can happen.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hear your suggestion loud and clear. I don't think that currently is the public pitch from the association. The public pitch is very much, we want something to happen and we're going to pursue a physical event. Now that pursuit will be supported by a virtual platform. I think it's called TFWA 365, and it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out, because I'm sure you're right, some kind of hybrid solution is likely, I think, to be the outcome in an uncertain world. Well, let's see how it all pans out, Roger. Thanks for those comments. Well, we're going to close off this first edition by just finding out a little bit more about you and what you like doing in your spare time, if you have any, because I know you work very hard at the SEVA Group. And we're going to do that, Roger, by giving you a holiday. We're going to give you a holiday on the desert island, in fact. Natalie and Isabella are going to come with you, and we're going to give you a few creature comforts to take with you. I'm going to start with a piece of tech. What's it going to be?
Ooh, I think I'm a bit of an Apple-file, Martin, so anything by Apple, as long as you've got me some power on the island. So if I've got a generator, anything Apple, unfortunately, because that's where most of my videos and films and photos are. So I think that's what I'd go with for tech.
All right. Now, of course, before you got on the desert island, we had to take you there. We went via an airport where we allowed you to pick up one duty-free item. What would it be?
One duty-free item, I think it would have to be a nice bottle of Glenfiddich 15 Distillery Edition, travel retail exclusive. My former colleagues are probably all shouting at me, why are you not saying Johnny Walker? But with the distributors of William Grant, so I think William Grant and Sons, so I think it's a Glenfiddich Distillery Edition for me. Okay, and of course, to go into that duty-free shop, you had to set foot on an airport. What's your favourite airport, by the way, around the world? I'm pretty lucky, Martin, that I've visited a lot of airports in the world. And this is probably two answers. So my heart probably says DXB, Dubai, because it's my home. And arriving here or departing from here always brings a smile to my face. However, my head probably says Schiphol, so Amsterdam, for those who haven't been. One of the most naturally lit airports, I think, you'll get in the world. Really, really nicely, naturally lit airport. And also, secondly, it's the only airport in the world where you can go and hide, get your own space and not really see anyone if you don't want to. It's more like a shopping mall. There's lots of little nooks and crannies. And for those of you who don't know, my special tip is there's actually a museum at Schiphol Airport, a Rijksmuseum. I'm sure there are museums at other airports. I think Delhi has one. I think Mumbai does as well. But this is fascinating. Like, Reich's paintings, for those who don't know, are exceptionally amazing paintings and very expensive, and they have a full museum there to go and see his work. So for those reasons, it's Schiphol.
All right, and look, we've got you back on that desert island, and as we look to close out this program with a little bit of music, what music going to play on that paradise island of yours, Roger?
This is where I lose any credibility I had, Martin, if I had any before this. Probably Lionel Richie. Something by Lionel Richie, yeah, definitely. I'm a big fan.
I never took Roger Jackson for a Lionel Richie fan. So there you have it, folks. We told you we'd uncover some secrets from our guests. Well. Roger, it's been great to be with you. You've got some exciting guests coming up in future issues. You and I will be co-hosting this event. Any clues you can offer us?
I think not yet. I think we'll announce the guests as we go along. But I think we're going to get a really wide, diverse guest list, both not just senior stakeholders right throughout businesses. I think we just want really interesting characters who can actually bring insight. But the most important thing is we find out about them, what makes them tick, not necessarily in work, also out of work. We've got some exceptionally different characters in travel retail, and I think if we can use Tripod as that forum to get everybody on here, that would be my goal anyway.
Well, indeed. Well, we look forward to future editions. Roger, thank you for supporting the initiative of Tripod and for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you in coming weeks. See you soon. Thank you, Mr. Roger Jackson.
Cheers, Martin.